We all think we know the story of the 10 plagues of Egypt. You've got the frogs, the darkness, the whole Red Sea splitting in two. But what if that story, the one we all know so well, is really just the surface? What if there's a much deeper, more calculated conflict happening just underneath?
What if this wasn't just about a stubborn king and a bunch of escalating disasters? What if this was a carefully staged drama, a showdown about the very nature of power, of freedom, and of worship itself?
So you've got to understand, this was not a random series of disasters. Every single detail, from the very first sign to that final terrible plague, was a targeted message. It was a specific move in a cosmic chess march designed to answer one question for all time. Who is really in charge here?
All right, so the first round of this cosmic showdown wasn't actually Moses versus Pharaoh. No, it was a clash between two fundamentally different kinds of power. On one side, you have the creative power of God, and on the other, you've got the cheap imitations of Pharaoh's court magicians.
And there's this fascinating pattern that emerges right away. So the magicians, they could copy the first couple of plagues, right? They turned water to blood, they summoned more frogs. But notice what they're doing. They're only adding to the chaos. Their power was just a shadow, a corruption of what already existed. They could mimic destruction, but they couldn't create anything new or restore any kind of order.
But then came the third plague, the gnats from the dust, and they just hit a brick wall. Their magic completely failed. And their failure was so total, so undeniable, that they had to just throw up their hands and admit defeat. Their declaration, "This is the finger of God," wasn't just them making an excuse. It was a stunning confession. They were totally, utterly outmatched. So here's the bottom line from that first confrontation. It drew a really clear line in the sand. Destructive power can mimic, it can corrupt, it can tear things down. But the power to create life from something as lifeless as dust, well, that belongs to the Creator alone. This wasn't just some magic show. It was a battle over the very definition of what power is.
Okay, but that whole battle over creation, that was just the opening act. The next stage of this conflict was way more personal. It didn't take place on the soil of Egypt, but inside the heart and the mind of Pharaoh himself. And this is where the story gets really, really deep.
If you read the account closely, it reveals this deliberate and frankly kind of chilling progression. In the early plagues, the text repeatedly says that Pharaoh hardened his own heart. He saw the evidence, he felt the pain, and he actively, personally chose to dig in his heels and resist.
It's only after Pharaoh repeatedly slams the door shut again and again that the language shifts. And this is really important. This isn't God just zapping his free will. It's a profound theological principle, sometimes called judicial hardening. Essentially, God is confirming the choice that Pharaoh has already made. It's like God is saying, "You want to go down this path? Fine, I will let you." Think of it like this. God doesn't start the fire of rebellion in Pharaoh's heart. He just lets it burn hotter. Pharaoh basically becomes a walking billboard for what happens when you constantly reject truth. His own stubbornness becomes the very stage on which God's power is displayed for the entire world to see. And Pharaoh's hardened heart, well, it sets the stage for the grand finale in Egypt, a direct, systematic takedown of the entire religious system of the most powerful empire on the planet. This was now a battle for worship. And the source text does not mince words about the purpose here. This wasn't just about freeing slaves. It was about exposing the Egyptian gods as total frauds. The plagues were like surgical strikes, designed to dismantle their entire worldview, one deity at a time. And the strategy here, it's absolutely brilliant. Turning the Nile to blood wasn't just an ecological disaster. It was a direct assault on Hapi, the god of the Nile. The plague of total darkness, that was a shot at Ra, the sun god, who is Egypt's most powerful deity. And that final devastating plague, the death of the firstborn, was a judgment on Pharaoh himself, who was seen as a god on earth. It was a complete and total dismantling of their entire reality.
But the story doesn't end when the Israelites cross the Red Sea. In this fascinating twist, this entire confrontation, the themes of slavery, judgment, and this miraculous freedom, it becomes a blueprint. It's a prophetic pattern for a much larger future conflict that's described at the very end of the Bible.
You see, later in the biblical story, Egypt becomes this kind of code word. It comes to represent any oppressive system anywhere in the world that's built on power and false worship and exploitation. Because of this, the escape from Egypt isn't just a one-time historical event, it becomes a powerful promise of a final, ultimate rescue.
And the echoes are just stunning. The book of Revelation describes a series of final judgments that fall on the world, and they mirror the plagues of Egypt almost exactly. You've got water turning to blood, agonizing sores, a terrifying darkness. It's the Exodus story playing out all over again, but this time on a global stage.
So you see, these core themes are woven through the entire narrative. It's always about freedom from bondage. It's always about rescue through the blood of a lamb, whether that's on a doorpost or on a cross. And it's always a victory that just bursts forth in song. The book of Revelation even has the rescued singing the song of Moses and of the Lamb, tying it all together perfectly. And remember Pharaoh's negotiations? Go, but don't go too far. Leave your children behind. Leave your livestock. They were all these attempts to allow a form of worship while still keeping the Israelites on a leash. And that reveals what the real battle was always about. It was never about their location, it was about their loyalty. A conflict between total allegiance and a compromised, controlled obedience.
And that brings it all right back to us, doesn't it? This whole story of the plagues, it's not just ancient history, it's a mirror. If the ultimate conflict has always been about who or what we worship, then we have to ask ourselves, what are the modern-day Egypts that demand our loyalty? What compromises are we tempted to make, and where are we going to draw the line?